Adjusting one's life attitude is a manifestation of wisdom. Many years ago, I went to Longhua Temple and had a conversation with an old monk there. He was quite old, probably around 90 years old. I asked him a series of Buddhist questions, but he could only answer one, and he couldn't answer the rest. Then he asked me, "What do you do?" I said, "I teach philosophy at school." He said, "No wonder you ask me such difficult questions." Then he asked me if I had children. I said yes. He asked if they had started going to school. I said my son had started early on, learning subjects like mathematics and science. He said, "That's not what I mean. I mean, has your son read Buddhist scriptures or philosophical books?" I said no, he hasn't read them yet. He said, "Make him read them quickly." I asked why, and he said, "You should know that in this lifetime, there are few things that can be passed on to the next generation. For example, wealth cannot be taken with you after death. But there are two things that can be passed on: the karma we create in this lifetime, whether good or bad, can be transmitted to the next generation. And the wisdom we cultivate in this lifetime can also be passed on. So make your son read Buddhist scriptures or philosophical books quickly. The effect is the same, it cultivates wisdom. If your son cultivates wisdom in this lifetime, he will lead a happier life in the next." When I heard this, I was skeptical in my heart. I thought, who knows if we really have past lives, present lives, and future lives? This matter has yet to be determined. When I returned home, I remembered his words. I thought about it seriously and found it to be reasonable. It's not that I suddenly started believing in past lives, present lives, and future lives, but I realized that he was telling me a truth. We need to cultivate wisdom, and there's no other way to do it. Accumulated knowledge doesn't necessarily lead to wisdom. A person may have a high IQ, be very intelligent, but that doesn't mean they have wisdom. Their capacity for insight may be shallow, right? So where does wisdom come from? He essentially told me that we need to read two major books. One is the Book of Everyday Life, which we read every day. The other is the great humanistic classics, whether it's Buddhist scriptures or philosophy. We need to walk between these two major books to cultivate wisdom. He said that the transmission of wisdom to the next generation is actually a concept in Buddhism called innate wisdom. Our wisdom in this lifetime is brought from the past life. Of course, this has a prerequisite, whether there really are past lives. That's a different matter, and of course, I now definitely believe in it, but that's not the topic for today. We all have a background, each person has a background, so he essentially mentioned the concept of innate wisdom. The wisdom passed from the past life to this life may have a shallow capacity for insight, so what do we do if it's shallow? We can cultivate it. Cultivation has two aspects: one is the experiences of real life, and the other is what? The great humanistic classics. This is nurturing our inherent wisdom. When our wisdom roots grow deep, it's like a tree, right? Every tree has roots, some with deep roots and others with shallow roots. When winter comes, a cold season, all the trees lose their flowers and leaves, becoming bare. But some trees freeze to death, while others remain unharmed. When spring arrives, those trees still flourish with flowers and leaves. Why? It's because their roots are deep. Therefore, Buddhism uses this root as a metaphor for wisdom, which is an apt comparison. It refers to our wisdom as the root organ. As Master Hongren, the fifth patriarch of Zen Buddhism, said of Huineng, the eventual sixth patriarch, this southerner has deeply rooted wisdom. Having deep wisdom is the most important thing. We can't help our children with other things, such as their innate talent or IQ, intelligence quotient. We have no means to change that, right? It's beyond our control. We can't control their appearance or their future fortunes. Those are determined by their fate. However, the meaning of their existence and the state of their life come from their wisdom, and that's something we can help with. What we can do is limited, but this is fundamentally important. I always remember an example. Some old friends of mine know that I often bring up this example. There was a student at Fudan Medical School who had put poison in his classmate's water, resulting in a tragic outcome for 2 families. When I heard the news, I was extremely shocked. I thought there must have been deep-seated hatred between the 2 students. However, the investigation revealed that there was no deep-seated hatred at all. It was just a minor friction between 2 students with incompatible personalities. I couldn't understand how it could escalate to such an extent, causing a classmate's death. When such an event occurs, my initial reaction is that the student who poisoned his classmate's water must not have read great works of humanistic literature, at least not tragic works. His mind had never been shaken, his soul had never been baptized, so to speak, and he didn't have the reverence for life. Could such a person have low intelligence? It's not possible. As you all know, it's not easy to be admitted to Fudan, and he not only was admitted to Fudan Medical School but also approved for a direct PhD program, a combined master's and PhD program, which was just approved. Some things really can't be achieved through competition. We have to step back and realize that if we don't step back, we won't be able to save our children. Over and over again, what I'm trying to say is something simple yet fundamental. We need to make decisive choices, without fear or hesitation. In cities like Shanghai today, the most modernized city in China, our children have diverse paths ahead of them. They can go abroad, attend university, or start their own businesses. There are various paths. We cannot design their paths for them. We can only ensure their healthy spiritual growth during the process of their upbringing. We should provide them with a modern, foundational, civilized knowledge structure. All the other competitive goals are artificially imposed by society, and I won't delve into the origins of that compulsion here. It primarily stems from the commercialization of education. It's essential for us to cherish and embrace life, don't you agree? We have all gathered here because we have a deep love for life. Having a heart that is not empty is of utmost significance. By nurturing a heart that is not empty, we can ensure that our children, too, will not experience emptiness in their lives as they grow older. If they are unable to find meaning in life within the framework of our society and family, how can they develop a sense of purpose? Let me give you another example. I think the meaning of our children's lives comes from several aspects. First, they are born into a family where their parents raise and care for them. Under the love and care of their parents, they grow up and should have a sense of gratitude, right? A feeling of gratitude naturally leads to filial piety. Now, why don't children have filial piety? We need to examine the parents themselves. To make a child have a sense of responsibility, what is the prerequisite? You need to give them opportunities to take responsibility. If you have never given them the opportunity to take responsibility, how can they develop a sense of responsibility? You say they should have a sense of responsibility, but isn't that just empty words? You need to give them the chance to fulfill their responsibilities. For example, if you fall ill, with a high fever and a cold, you come back home on sick leave, and what is the most important thing for you? It might be that your child comes home from school around 5 o'clock, and you have prepared the meal, right? Even though you have a high fever of 39 degrees, you still prepare all the meals and then go to bed. The first thing should be for the child. You have done it wrong. This is the opportunity for your child to take responsibility. You should lie in bed, and when the child comes home from school and there's nothing to eat, you should ask them to bring you water, get your medicine, and buy things to bring to your bedside. Let them have the opportunity to serve you soup. You have never given them that chance, right? This is an important step for the child to experience the meaning of life. As Chinese people, we have Confucianism, which first transmits the meaning of life to us through family bonds. Confucianism allows Chinese people to stand on this land, and this land is built on family bonds and the culture and responsibilities passed down through them. When someone has an empty heart, they lose all these things, and they have no way of finding the meaning of life. As we grow up, if we have a career, we should first be grateful for that career. For example, if I study philosophy, philosophy is not something I created. Thanks to the existence of philosophy, my individuality, Wang Defeng, has the opportunity to flourish. Shouldn't I be grateful for this philosophy? If I were a musician, what I would be grateful for is music itself, such a great art form. You cannot reverse this, you must serve music and dedicate yourself to it, not the other way around. The meaning of life is built up slowly like this. We need opportunities for young people to address the meaning of life. The meaning of life has become empty now. Why? Because we don't know where the meaning of our small self lies. So we should learn some Buddhist philosophy. The spirit of Mahayana Buddhism teaches that great wisdom is great compassion. We have all heard of that, right? We gradually comprehend it and then pass it on to our children, embodying it in our actions. I believe this is the essence of family learning. That's all I want to say.